ahead and get started. All right. Good evening. I'm Chief Murtha. With me tonight up on the dais here is Commander Pickett and our crime analyst, Beth Daniel. Tonight we are going to discuss the investigative tool sometimes known as facial recognition. We're not here to address the constitutional issues surrounding the use of this tool. That was settled in the legislative session. The legislature determined that it was constitutional and set guidelines and a path forward for agencies like ourselves to use this investigative tool. Tonight we'll discuss the steps necessary to implement this and the accountability that's required for the use of this product. We'll discuss the efficiency of this tool as part of our ability to manage our time and resources in a way that's not only better for the department, but provides better outcomes for the citizenry and the taxpayer. This tool only uses the information that we already have and currently use. The difference is in the time and resources we spend to find the leads that facial recognition technology develops, and our ability to interdict and stop those criminals from committing further offenses during the period of investigation through a quicker process. Please note that no computer will make any decision by itself. They only provide a lead to a human, an investigator, who follows up on that and uses that as an indicator of a possible direction. You'll hear more about that from analyst Daniel in a minute. At every step, an investigator is involved and required to develop a case no different than any other case with no different information, with the same leads that they would develop if they hand searched through mugshots and the database that we currently have. We currently live in a world where pictures and information are available everywhere. We all understand that. Companies use our own personal information in ways we don't always understand, and cameras are on us all day long. This is not that. This is the use of technology to process mugshots quickly or to identify individuals who are unable to identify themselves. Tonight you'll be presented with information regarding the legislatively allowable uses of this product and the strong guidelines that accompany usage of this product. After the presentation, we'd like to hear from our community. Individuals who would like to comment can come up to the podium to my left, speak for 3 minutes, and comment as long as you've signed up. The meeting will conclude at 7 p.m., but if you have additional comments, you're free to submit them on the agenda that we provided, at the email on the agenda we provided. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Commander Pickett with any additional comments, and then we'll go to Analyst Daniel after that.
And I don't have any additional comments if we want to go ahead and go right into the presentation.
Okay, will do. We've got a little PowerPoint here to help kind of emphasize some things, but facial recognition is a mathematical map of someone's face. It's an algorithm, it's technology that's developed and tested, and it uses the mathematical generated image and compares it to something in its library. For us, that's mugshots and only mugshots. We don't have access to DMV photos or anything like that. So in 2022, June of 2022, the Colorado Senate created Senate Bill 22-113, and that is, outlines the requirements an agency must abide by if they want to use facial recognition. It also put in place a task force to oversee any agency, the use of facial recognition at any agency. As you can see on the PowerPoint, the requirements in the Senate bill, which we also have posted online, they list out that you have to file a notice of intent with your city council, which we did and had a meeting with them. early on. You have to produce an accountability report, which we also have posted online. Policy, which we have posted online as well. And that there's got to be room for transparency and public review and comment, and that's what this meeting and the previous meeting, and then we have one more 2 weeks from tonight. All users have to be trained prior to getting access to the system. And there's a lot of documentation that goes into it. So every use of facial recognition, every time anybody who is authorized to use it runs somebody through that, they have to do a lot of documentation, a lot of supplemental report, and they also have to put it into a log that can be audited. And then once they're done with the facial recognition and if they get a lead out of that, that lead has to go through peer review. So not only does the initial person using facial recognition review anything that came up and puts their own eyes on it and looks for things, similarities, ears, eyes, hairline, facial structure, tattoos on the face, anything like that. But then when that user decides that they think that they've got a potential lead, that then has to go through a peer review. So somebody else who's also been trained in the system and is authorized to use it has to review that. And then auditing procedures. The state identifies that every agency who uses it has to go through audits. And then the state also has the ability, we have to provide, every year we have to provide all of our documentation to them to audit if they would like. So what is facial recognition? It's a tool for us. It's another tool in our tool belt. It's very similar to a wide range of things that we already have. It's used to develop leads, just like all the other things that we have. So there's nothing that we have that says this is 100% who you're looking for, and facial recognition doesn't do that either. It's just a lead. Requires human review twice. Requires the initial person using it as well as the peer review. And then it requires investigation. So again, it's just a lead that will help a detective or an officer have something to follow up on and look deeper into. It is not a definitive ID. It's not an automatic probable cause for arrest. It does not say that this person committed a crime or the crime that you're looking at. It's also not a live scan. Our officers don't have, there's no technology, and if there was, they wouldn't have it anyway, but there's no ability to tie the body-worn cameras to facial recognition. They can't do a live look through that. They can go back if there's something that they caught on their body-worn cameras that they need to. They can go back and take a screenshot and do facial recognition if there's probable cause to do facial recognition with it at that point. But there's no ability to use their body-worn cameras live to check. There are a lot of benefits. Again, it's another tool in our toolbox. It increases the efficiency for our investigations and solving crimes. You know, we're gonna figure out who the suspect is one way or another, and this can sometimes just help us provide a lead to get to that faster, which in turn increases public safety. You know, if we can identify someone who is a homicide suspect or a robbery suspect faster, then there's a chance that we can take them off of the street quicker and prevent other crimes from happening. Any questions? Jeff? Yes.
Are you going for comment or questions, Jeff? Okay, yep. I just wanted to clarify or reemphasize a couple things real quick before I get to you, Jeff, if you don't mind, give me a second here. But I think when we think of technology, it can be a little bit scary. I often compare this to fingerprint analysis. Back in the 50s and 60s, fingerprint analysis was done by a team of people who examined fingerprints, and then we allowed computers to take that over with peer review. This is similar in that it's a uniquely identifying imprint of a human, and this allows us to leverage the technology to create an outcome that is often better than the human can do with just their eye and through the visual techniques. So I want to make sure everybody is aware that, again, this is not a passive collection system. It's an active one, and it's only used, it's used in few cases. It's not used in every case by any means, but it's only used in few cases where it's needed, and if it's not needed, it's not used indiscriminately. That being said, we have a question, comment from Jeff.
Yeah, just really quickly, firstly, I just want to thank the police department for having this open forum on this subject, and I hope more people take advantage of the opportunity in 2 weeks to listen and to make comment. I did have a question. I've been doing some research into facial recognition, and I've been reading a few studies that indicate that for people of color, especially as your tone of skin gets darker, the software is not efficient to the point of that in some cases it could not distinguish at all between individuals. So I'm wondering, I think you said that you were using Lumen as that software, and I'm wondering if Lumen has addressed that at all, or if in the training, if that is addressed, that issue of race is addressed toward this facial recognition. Thank you.
That's a great question. And that's a fair and true statement. There's lots of research out there that says exactly what you just said. It's not as, the percentage isn't as high for accuracy for people of color. And the darker the skin tone, the harder it is. Some of that they have attributed to just the lack of faces in the system to be able to run the algorithms and continuously run the algorithms to do it. But that's where the human aspect comes in. So when we run the face through facial recognition, the system doesn't bring up one person and say, this is your person, right? Or we don't find a match. It will bring up a lot. There isn't a specific number, but I've seen 50 come up, and they'll be kind of, they'll have an estimated accuracy level, like 93% match, and so on. One of them, it can be down to 35% match, and it can still be the person. That's where the human review comes in, right? So you get these, but then you have to, me or whoever else is using it has to actually look at each picture and say, all right, well, no, the ears aren't quite right, or the eyes aren't right, and it may result in, nope, there's no good leads, to your point, if it just isn't able to do it. We're not just gonna pick one out of the things that it sends. We just may go, I don't think it's any of these guys. I don't think it's any of these women.
Yeah, if I can just add on to that. I've seen those studies, Jeff, and certainly we're not tone deaf to that reality, and that's certainly, I think, something that our detectives will discuss as we launch into this. But what I would say is that, the human review of this process is really the critical piece of it. And, Commander Pickett's up here because he leads our investigative unit. And using this as a tool is something we want to do, and it's certainly something we think will help public safety, but it's not the be-all, end-all. It's what we're doing right now. So if the computer has bias, I would say that there's probably human bias in everything, right? We can all agree that we've concluded that humans have biases. That's just natural. So I don't know, and there's no study, but tangentially I would say a human could be equally or more biased than a computer when looking through mugshots in just the same way. And we have to be careful for that. And I think what this does is set up a more stringent review of the process than we already have in place with the mugshots we're currently using. In other words, when we have a detective go through our mugshot books and look at the same data that would be available to the computer, we are not required to do necessarily a peer review or to necessarily have those. So there's more safeguards in place for this than currently exist. So I think what I would say is that there is a pretty good chance that the outcome is going to be more sound, and that the human interaction with the tool creates or sets up an opportunity for us to have more review of the biases that could be either in a computer or a human at any step. I don't know if that helps with the explanation, but that's my thought process on it. That's why I feel comfortable to say that we will be doing this and we'll be, excuse me, strictly following those standards. Did you want to say something, John?
I did. I also want to add that as part of the legislative regulations on this, we have to look at the percentage of accuracy that our tool has. And currently, the one we're going to be using with mugshots, it's 99.7% accurate.
I hope we've at least partially answered your question, Jeff, but I think that's where we're at. Jim, did you have something for us?
No, I was just going to see if there's any more questions. Come on up.
It's not set up to be a Q&A, but we'll answer questions if we can, certainly. This is more public comment on it.
I was there at the last meeting. My name's John, and I had questions last meeting that didn't quite fit what the answers were. One of those questions is the cost of this. I was told 2 weeks ago that there is no cost because you already have the Lumen service. You failed to disclose what the training cost is. I ran across the city of Avon, Colorado's report, and they fully disclosed on how much it costs. I don't know how many officers that you're going to be training this for. Could you provide me an answer for that first?
First, I'll say the product itself, I think, is probably what we're focused on the cost for. The training, I'm not sure how many training hours are required, but if there is
4 hours training required for each person using it, and for supervisory positions, it'll be a 24-hour course.
Yep.
Each 4-hour course is $150 that the city has to pay, and the 24-hour one is $550. So that was not disclosed
I
last
believe that's
meeting.
for Avon.
That was for them, yes.
For the legislative, doesn't require that.
No, the legislative doesn't, but you have to be trained by Lumen how to use it. It isn't you guys teaching your own guys how to use it. The company has to teach you how to use their software correctly. They have to go through a course, is that not correct?
That is not. They're stated in the legislative rules. It just says training. So what we're doing is we are preparing training, and we are going to be using Lumen as part of that training.
Well, Lumen would be charging you for their time.
Actually, we just pull that right off of their website.
Okay, but there is a cost.
There
Which
is
you
a
didn't
cost
disclose.
in hours.
Yes, hours and money to the citizens for the officers to use this.
Yes, to answer your question, there's a fairly nominal cost of hours, man or person hours used dedicated to training, and certainly we would think that would be the case with any product we were using. We do that all the time, and it's commonplace in police to make sure that we're accurately and properly trained for anything we do yearly training, and that certainly is a cost to the taxpayers. But training is the backbone of our police department, and we take pride in the fact that we don't cut any corners on training. I don't have that number for you. If you submit that online, we'll try and get the total hours for you and get your cost for this. But in comparison to what we do otherwise, I would say it's a very nominal cost.
Yeah. I do agree would probably be nominal for it. It only costs them about $3,000 for their training, if I remember right. But still, it should have been mentioned when I asked these costs at the last meeting, that there is a cost. So that was just one of the things. The other thing I would like to ask about is this act that was passed, which is basically law at this point, says that there's certain things that are authorized and certain things that are unauthorized. Now, the state doesn't state what the penalties are for unauthorized uses. And I'm wondering why. I mean, you guys are enacting it by policy, but yet the state's saying these things are unauthorized. So if there's an unauthorized use of it, the penalty falls under you guys to punish them and not the state. And I want to know why the state, well, you probably can't answer that, why the state couldn't do that, but why are you doing it this particular way? Is it they're telling you you have to do it this way, that it falls under your policies, that anybody violating this law is only subject to departmental policy violations?
My understanding is that's correct. There's no necessarily criminal penalty for this, but departmental sanctions up to and including termination would be part of our policy for violations of this or egregious violations of this policy. So it falls within our policy and our scope of our policy to provide discipline for this. It's a pretty severe penalty, but much like our penalties for NCIC, our National Crime Information Computer, if you violate that, if you misuse it, if you run somebody inappropriately, there is a stipulated penalty and fine for that. But there's also a departmental policy that's more severe than that. And I would say that the legislature left it open for reasons I can't explain, but I can only talk about what we can do internally and what we will do. And what we will do is we will hold people accountable to the same way we do for violations of our NCIC policy. If you misuse the tool, you're subject to discipline up to and including termination. That doesn't necessitate that it will be, but they're severe. And it's a pretty wide open range depending on how egregious and what the intent was of violating the policy.
Okay. What about just general misuse without, let's put it this way, you know that situations arise where it can be misused, such as an officer can claim that they're looking at a possible violation of law, but wish to identify the person. At what point are they required to say that there was a violation of the law as compared to saying, we have a suspicious person that we need to identify?
Like every document we produce or every investigation, we base ourselves on reasonableness and probable cause. So to use this, I think as Analyst Daniel pointed out, when we get to the point where we have probable cause, which is really the benchmark for all the things we do in police work, we feel confident that we can use that. It's not necessarily just a tool we use in crime, though. If we find somebody who maybe has been struck on the head, we need to figure out who that person is. We'll use this tool as well to try and identify that person. We like to make notification to family and friends or whatever. So there's a myriad of uses, and as in any tool in the police department, whether that's what we carry on our belt, whether that's what we do every day with a citation, there is an opportunity for abuse. This one has much more guardrails than other ones. So I would say the opportunity for abuse here, when a peer is reviewing it and saying, why did you run this person, that gives us multiple layers of opportunity to make sure that what we're doing is correct. And then when the audits are done yearly and potentially by the state as well, they're going to ask those questions. So there's more safeguards on this than there are on almost anything else we do, to be quite frank with you. And I would say that, is there an opportunity for abuse? There's an opportunity for abuse in almost anything anybody does in any position of authority. But this one has some pretty strict guidelines, and us not following them would certainly be an end to this program for us. If we can't follow our own guidelines, state guidelines, we run some risk with the state as far as our accreditation and other aspects of our agency, and we're just not willing to do that. So I think there's a large downside to what you're suggesting, and I'm confident because we've had this program, and what I don't think we talked about was the fact that prior to 2020, maybe March of 2020, we used this program. We used it multiple times, and we used it without fail. We used it in good faith without the guidelines that were on there, and we never once had a problem. So this has been something we've used. There was a break after the company stopped providing this service, but now that it's been mandated, or it's been reviewed by the legislature, and they've given it their seal of approval, we're not only going back to what we used to do, we're going back there with a lot stronger guidance and guideline. So we have a track record, I guess is what I'm saying. We've proven we can use it, we can prove we can use it in good faith, and we're going to continue to manage ourselves in that same ethical way.
I understand you've been using it in 2019 and you did prior to use it, but it was never, of course, brought to the public about it at that time, if I remember right, that you just used it and then I had to stop using it, and then now we're at this period. Is that correct?
Prior to this, there was no there was no guidelines at all really on facial recognition.
What I meant was the public wasn't even aware that you were using it at that time.
I'm not sure, I wasn't here in that time, but I think the public, it wasn't hidden from the public. It was just a tool that was rolled out, and we took advantage of it. I'm sure there was opportunities where the public was informed, but I don't know for sure. It would be speculation on my part to say whether or not we formally notified the public at that point. We're here about what we're doing now, and that's just a reference to the fact that we did use it before, but now we are required. Obviously, the guidelines are stricter now, and we're following those guidelines, and we're thankful that we got guidelines from the legislator that makes us feel good that the citizens want us to, are okay with us using this. They want us to use this, and they're balancing that against the public's right to privacy.
One other question on this. Now, you say you have oversight on this. I'm aware that they have formed a task force that oversees. They didn't give them any authority to do anything, though, if they find any wrongdoing. All they get to do is write a report, and that is it. There is no authority over this system in their task force. Kind of just write a report. What do you feel about this, for how this bill was wrote, that it should have been wrote better, or, I mean, you're saying oversight and accountability, but there is no bite to that accountability is what I'm saying. They can't do anything to your department for violating any of these policies.
I'm not sure that that's 100% accurate, but I would suggest that oversight is exactly that, the ability to look over our shoulders and see what we're doing. And I think if there's an issue, or if an issue arises, I am quite sure that the legislature will adjust and provide penalties for anybody who's doing that if they decided that they wrote something in error. I think the bill is strongly written. I think it's strongly worded. I think it requires us to follow a very set pattern. That's why we sit here before you tonight. And I think that, the misuse of this product, which I think is what you're getting at, certainly has so many eyes on it and so many folks that are in the process that if the task force feels that they are rubber stamping something and it's not being properly adjudicated, I have no doubt that this will go back in front of the legislature. But right now, any formal complaint made by the task force to me or anybody else will be dealt with like I suggested. This is a tool. This is something we're going to do, and if we can't do it right, we're not going to do it at all. So I think most agencies, and I don't speak for any other, feel the same way. There's no reason for us to use a tool that we can't use properly, and that's been the Wheat Ridge way for as long as I've been here. Do you have any other comments on that, Beth, or thoughts about the task force?
No, I would agree with what you said. I can't imagine the state legislature creating a task force, having people from all over Colorado a part of it, and then not having any say in what we do, and it not having any effect on what they put through. So,
Have you read the revised statute for creating the task force? Of what's required of them?
Let me just comment on what you said before that, though. When you say there's no penalties, there's ultimate penalties for police departments. I think Aurora found that out when the state's attorney put them under consent decree. We're all subject to those same rules. If we can't follow, if there's a pattern and practice of misbehavior, there is an ultimate penalty, and we would all pay the price for that. And if they find out that this police department operates in a manner that's not consistent with the values and guidelines, that's all it takes, is for them to activate the state's attorney and let them know that, hey, we want you to look at this police department. So I think we run the risk of, putting our credibility and, quite frankly, our credentials on the line here. So I think what you're getting at is there's no teeth in it, and we think there is. We operate under that assumption every day, that if we get out of line, we are subject to review from the state and from Post and from those places that, authorize us to do what we do. So there are ways and there are other ways. Without stating it right here in the document formally for how they can address this, there are plenty of ways. We've seen that, and we felt that, not necessarily here, but in other departments around the state.
Yep. Now, that pretty much covered my questions at this point.
Thank you. Do we have anybody else who wants to speak?
Seeing no other questions, we have the opportunity to make public comment, a statement. It would not be question and answer kind of thing, but if you'd like to make a statement and you've signed up, I have one person signed up. Would you like to make a statement?
Jeff, are you good, or do you want to say anything else? Okay. All right. That being said, and no other persons here before us tonight, we'll conclude this meeting. I thank you, gentlemen, for attending and providing insight and information. We will certainly internalize that and see if there's anything that we can glean from that will make us better. And that's the point of these meetings, is to hear what the community has to say about this and see if we can find anything that doesn't match our values and address it. So thank you for that. Thank you for everybody else who helped out with this meeting, and have a great evening. Good night.